Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Martha McDevitt Pugh, our International Chair of Democrats Abroad.
Thanks so much, Karen. And greetings to all of our members and guests from across the globe. I'm really delighted to be able to welcome Attorney General Eric Holder today. He was the first African American U.S. Attorney General from 2009 to 2015, focusing on civil rights, criminal justice reform, and efforts to reduce sentencing disparities. And Attorney General Holder has returned to private practice and now chairs the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, where he leads efforts to combat gerrymandering and ensure fair electoral maps across the country. His current work emphasizes protecting voting rights, upholding democratic institutions, and expanding civic engagement. And with that, Attorney General Holder, please take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Martha, for that kind introduction, and thank you for having me here today. Look, to all of you, I want to start off by just thanking all of you for your continued engagement from all parts of the world to help protect, our democracy. I know it's got to be hard. It's got to be difficult to watch from afar as Trump and his allies turn our country into something that in some ways is almost unrecognizable. I know that it is difficult to be in the United States and to see what's going on. I'm now in a hotel room where am I? In Copenhagen. That's right. I was in Stockholm. I'm in Copenhagen. The traveling that you all must do is just is pretty amazing. But it's been interesting to see how people here, both in Sweden and in Denmark, have been asking questions, really pointed questions about what's going on in the United States. I've said this before, and I get into this group, but I think it remains true that one of the things that we have to understand, and that has become unbelievably manifest, is that Republicans are willing to do anything. And I mean like anything to win. The attacks on our democracy are not only coming from the Trump administration and the Republican majorities in the Congress, they're also coming from Republicans in the states as well. Whether it's attempting to use the courts to overturn a free and fair election, to dismantle key protections in the Voting Rights Act, or enlisting billionaires like Elon Musk to buy a state Supreme Court seat, there's no line that they won't cross. For them, the acquisition and the maintenance of power is what it's all about. Now, to be clear, they're doing this because they are seeing growing, and I think widespread opposition to their extreme, unpopular, un-America agenda. And you saw the polling information that was released, just yesterday. And that they know at base, they really know that they can't win on a fair playing field. And so their view is that they need to cheat in order to win. And that's why state by state, the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, the NDRC, and our affiliates have been deploying like every tool we can to fight back against these, what are essentially un-American anti-democracy efforts. And we've supported Get Out the Vote campaigns in Wisconsin to help the people push back against Musk money at the ballot box. We were successful there. Susan Crawford will take her seat later this year as a Supreme Court justice in the state Supreme Court in Wisconsin. We're defending equal representation for voters in states like Alabama and Louisiana in court. We're sounding the alarm about Republican efforts in North Carolina to steal a state Supreme Court seat. I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. Now, I know that, some of you might be feeling a little tired, a little disenchanted by the constant news of an all-out assault on our democracy. But here's the deal. We can't disengage in this moment because the other side is showing no signs of letting up. That's just a reality. In moments like these, I like to think about, the people who came before us, like Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, I'm in no ways tired. And that's, I think, the spirit that we have to have. It's hard to take on all of this stuff, but we can't be tired. If we're going to honor the sacrifices, the commitment, the lives that were lost in order to perfect our democracy, we have to be engaged in our time. You think about the dangers that Fannie Lou Hamer faced in that fight for the right to vote and other basic civil rights. We don't have the luxury. Again, we don't have the luxury to be tired in this moment of great danger for our country. And we also can't expect that there's a cavalry, coming to save us. No miracles, no saviors. The deal is, it's we the people. We, the people on this call. We are the cavalry. In fact, this community could play a critical role to stop Republican efforts to overturn the results of the 2024 North Carolina Supreme Court election. Now, if the federal courts decide that North Carolina voters, including our military members and others who live and vote from overseas, need to prove yet again that their votes are lawful through a ballot cure process, we're going to really need your help to organize. Your engagement makes a difference. Your engagement could make the ultimate difference in this race. So I want to thank you for all the work that you have been doing and the work that you're going to continue to do. You all are heroes in this fight to protect our democracy. And what I would say again is this is not a time to feel down. This is a time for us to be vigorous, to be active in the fight for our democracy. We can do the tasks that are before us, just like every other generation of Americans has. I say this, all the time, that every generation of Americans is ultimately called upon to defend democracy, and now it's our time, and we cannot fail as other generations have succeeded. And so I'm confident that if we work together, if we stick together, if we stay committed, that we will do just fine. So thank you so much for having me on the call. And I'm going to try to close my shade over here so I can maybe get some less light, so maybe you can see me here. Oops.
Yeah, there you go. That's perfect.
I'm back.
Yes, we can see you again. Really great. Thank you so much for those opening remarks. And I want to give you the first question, which is from Michaela Bell, who lives in France. And Michaela asks, I feel helpless. What are the most effective ways that we who are living abroad can fight to save our democracy?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that question. And here's the deal. What I'd say, bottom line, there's a lot that you can actually do. A lot that you can actually do. For example, the Anti-Voter Save Act could come up for a vote in the Senate. And if that happens and it's passed, Donald Trump would be able to sign the Save Act into law. But we as citizens have the power to stop that by keeping up the pressure on senators to reject that bill. So you can pick up the phone, dial your senator to express your opposition, tell your senator to oppose the SAVE Act, send a text to that person's office, send an email to that person's office. When there's an election coming up, chances are that you can help even remotely by participating in virtual phone or text banks, for example. You can go to www.democratsabroad.org to find out ways in which you can help with regard to elections. So that's democratsabroad.org to find out ways that you can help. And if, as I said before, there's going to be a cure process, an unnecessary, inappropriate, but it possibly is going to happen, a cure process. If that process does have to take place in North Carolina, we're going to need each and every one of you to help. So be sure to stay in touch. Please stay in touch with Democrats abroad so they can provide you with accurate information for how to help if that is in fact needed. So, we're Democrats. We are creative, involved people. And so think of ways other than the ones that I have mentioned for you to stay in touch, to stay involved, to fight that feeling of helplessness. Getting back to what I said before about every generation of Americans, you got to think that from Valley Forge to Gettysburg, to Seneca Falls, to Normandy, to Selma, to Stonewall, every generation of Americans, again, has been called upon to protect and expand our democracy. And we cannot fail where they have succeeded. We dishonor them if we are not as active as we possibly can be. And so that feeling of helplessness, I think we need to replace with a sense of optimism and commitment, because I think optimism breeds engagement. Pessimism breeds resignation and acceptance. And this is not a time for resignation. This is not a time for acceptance. We have to fight these people every way we can, any way that we can.
Thank you, AG Holder. Our next question is from Kathleen in Austria. I would love it if AG Holder could address the SAVE Act, what it means for all U.S. citizens living abroad, and in particular, what it means for all married women in the U.S. who changed their last names when they married. I am concerned. I both live abroad and changed my name. This feels like a not very subtle way to take my rights away.
You're absolutely right. There ain't nothing subtle about this. This is vote thievery written in a statute. I mean, a more accurate name for the SAVE Act would be the Purge Act, because that's exactly what this bill aims to do. Instead of saving anything, this anti-democracy legislation would purge American voters off the registration rolls and then make it needlessly challenging for millions of them to re-register to vote again. Again, this is part of the Republican playbook. Let's make this difficult with the hope that, a certain number of people will not sign up, do the necessary things, and that will help them illegitimately win elections. The SAVE Act would put up barriers to voting by requiring that every single American, I mean, now listen to this now. I mean, this stuff is breathtaking. It require every single American citizen to provide very specific documents, chiefly by either presenting a passport or an original copy of their birth certificate in person when registering or re-registering to vote. Now, approximately 146 million American citizens, that's about half of all the people in this country, a little less than half, do not possess a passport. Now, to put that in perspective, 153 million Americans cast a ballot in the 2024 presidential elections. 153 million people vote 2024, 146 million people don't have a passport. Another 69 million women and 4 million men who have married and changed their names could not use their birth certificates to prove their identity or citizenship status under the SAVE Act, because their birth certificate does not match their current legal name. So the SAVE Act would also eliminate or upend, most methods of voter registration. For example, mail and online voter registration would be essentially abolished, and it would put an end to voter registration drives. I mean, think about that. It would put an end to voter registration drives. What could be more pro-democracy than that? You simply are asking people to, sign up and participate in our democracy. It would put an end to that. The only feasible way for every single American citizen, including all of you, to register to vote or to update their registration, including for an address or party change, would be to do so in person. Now think about that. If you live abroad and you want to register for the first time, or your registration is purged, or if you need to provide a simple update to your registration, you're talking about, if you're, I guess, on the other side of an ocean, buying an expensive plane ticket to get home, a long drive, for maybe if you're in the Americas, I don't, but some kind of, you're going to have to do something transportation-wise to get back home to register or to re-register in person. Now, this isn't a defect with the bill in the Republicans' eyes. This is their damn intention. This is their intention. They want to make it costly. They want to make it burdensome to register to vote so that people get discouraged and give up voting altogether. I think every single American voter in red and blue states ought to be alarmed by this attempt to enact really extreme voter suppression. Now, the House has passed this bill. We have a real chance to stop it in the Senate, and that's where you all come in. If you want to help, again, call your senator, tell them to vote no on the SAVE Act, text them, email them. Again, you can visit the Democrats Abroad website at democratsabroad.org, where they have posted information for how to call your senator, contact information for each senator. Tell your family and friends to reach out to and spread the word in your community and on social media to help raise awareness about the harmful SAVE Act. If there's a sense that the American people are against this act, there's a good chance that we will make sure that the Senate doesn't pass it. We tend to underestimate the power that we have as regular American citizens. An engaged, focused, committed American people are still an extremely, extremely powerful force. So I want all of you to do what you can personally, but also to get other people engaged in this effort as well. We have to stop the SAVE Act. We have to stop it.
So our next question is from the audience. It's from Peggy. Can executive orders actually bypass the Constitution? Even if Trump is using the Alien Enemies Act wrongly claiming that we're in a war.
No, the executive orders, they're important and they are consequential and they can be life, altering, but they don't have the power of law. First off, they're, an executive order is not as strong as a statute, and an executive order cannot supersede or overcome or modify the Constitution. All of these executive orders that he's put out, and I think the number was up to 137, something like that, all are subject to interpretation by judges using the United States Constitution. And an attempt to do something that is unconstitutional through an executive order, if so found by a judge, would void the executive order. And we've seen a great deal of success in the lawsuits that have been brought against these executive orders at the district court level with regard to a whole range of things, from the attacks on law firms to attacks on universities, with regard to the dismissal of certain employees at independent agencies and employees more generally within certain agencies. So yeah, these executive orders, they're signed with a flourish, they're held up with the weird Donald Trump, signature and all that stuff. And they are, again, I don't want to underestimate their importance, but they are not, they don't supersede, modify, or not subject to the constitutional provisions that order our lives as a nation.
So our final question is from Ruth Fishkin. How do we help the truth to get through to regular, not very engaged Americans who vote and who mostly get their view of reality from social media and glimpses of Fox News and bars? They are being sold out, but don't know it. When do they change? When does this change? Or how
Yeah.
do we change it?
Yeah, that's a tough question. So many people get their information from unreliable sources, from sources that are ideologically driven as opposed to truth driven. And I think, it's a question of trying to engage people on this phone, on this call, trying to engage with as many people as you possibly can, directing people to, appropriate sources of information, participating in as many meetings as we can and trying to get as many people involved in meetings. But we also have to kind of get out of our comfort zone. We can't just be talking to ourselves. We have to figure out ways in which we can engage those people who are almost part of a cult. How do you almost like deprogramming them in some ways? And one of the things I saw was, just approaching people and not telling them that they were wrong, but telling them that they were lied to, and coming up with ways in which you engage with people such that you're not challenging them as much as welcoming them back to the truth. Now, this is easier said, than done, because there are powerful forces engaged in the disinformation that is shot into our system, that showers the people of our nation, voters in our nation, both disinformation agents within the United States and then disinformation that comes from nations that oppose us. And the Attorney General, one of my successors, Pam Bondi, has decided that she's going to take down a very effective component in the Department of Justice that was focused on pushing back against stopping disinformation from foreign sources. That is, an act that she took that didn't get, I think, the necessary attention is extremely disturbing. So I think that we, again, have to be optimistic about the capacities that we have. And I would encourage everybody to, again, engage with people, get out of our comfort zones, and try to push, through your emails, your texts, stuff that you can do in person, however you reach other people. And if we each take the responsibility for talking to, I don't know, say 10 people and encourage them to talk to 10 people, this truth effort can actually expand. It's going to be difficult, though. I'm not going to kid you. It's going to be difficult because powerful forces are not committed to the dissemination of the truth.
I think we have time for just one more quick question. Well, it could be long, but do you think the checks of the judiciary will hold during these executive orders, ignoring them?
Yeah, yeah, that's, in some ways, that's the ultimate question. I think we're going to do fine at the district court level. I think we're going to do fine at the appellate court level. The question is going to be, at the end of the day, as all of these cases wind their way through the courts, what's the Supreme Court going to do? And, how do we get to five? How can you count to five? And, it's interesting because I say, how do we count to five? And I say that almost in an extremely disappointed way, because a lot of these cases should be decided 9-0. I mean, some of these cases are just clear. I mean, that gentleman, Abrego Garcia, moved to, El Salvador without any due process. That case is winding its way back up to the Supreme Court relatively quickly. That's a 9-zip case. I mean, it's a 9-0 case. Can I honestly say to you, I mean, let's be frank. Can I say that it's going to be a 9-0 opinion? No. I think I think, I think best scenarios, maybe it's probably 7-2. And I worry that it might be less than that. I think that at the lower court level, I think our courts are going to hold. And I think at the end of the day, on the vast majority of the things that get to the court, as the Supreme Court, the court will hold there as well. But then one of the questions becomes, well, what happens if the administration decides not to follow the dictates of a Supreme Court decision? Then, it's full-on constitutional crisis, something that we've really never faced before. And what I've told people is that, we have to, hopefully the judiciary uses the tools that it has, the contempt power. But if all things fail, it comes down to the American people again. And for a former attorney general who was committed to, the use of courtrooms and the law and briefs, sometimes you just have to say we have to hit the streets. We have to hit the streets, and our power has to be made manifest by demonstrating, peacefully demonstrating and demanding that our system live up to our constitutional ideals. I hope it doesn't come to that. I'm actually hopeful that the courts are going to hold. And I think actually, once the Supreme Court speaks, I tend to think that this administration, they'll look for every conceivable way that they can to, not do what the court says, with that word facilitate, in bringing Abrego Garcia, back to the United States. Well, they interpreted facilitate. So the court's got to be clear in its mandates. And I think if the court is clear, I think the administration will grudgingly, go along as well. So I'm actually hopeful, cautiously hopeful, that we're going to be able to look back on this and say that our court system has held. But one thing I would say here, maybe in ending, is that this is not a time, as I said, for complacency, for resignation, for acceptance. This is going to end. This administration is going to end. And when we get to 2029, we're going to look back and we're going to ask of ourselves and ask of people and institutions, where were you in 2025? Where were you in 2026? Where were you in 2027? Where were you in 2028? Were you active in the fight for democracy? Did you do all that you possibly could to save our country? Or were you complacent? Did you capitulate? Did you give in? That's not who the people are, on this call that we're doing today. But we got to make sure that more of our fellow citizens are feeling that fervor that I know exists in all of us. And if we do that, if we stay committed, if we stay focused, just like every other generation, we'll protect our democracy. In fact, I think we have the chance to even perfect, make our democracy even better. This is in some ways an opportunity, and I think we need to take advantage of what is going to be. It's a difficult time, and damage is going to be done. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Damage is going to be done, but I think at the conclusion of this administration, and during, at the conclusion of this administration, we're going to look back, and we're going to want to be able to say, I did everything that I could, and say that I was a part of a successful effort to push back and to ensure that America proceeded along in a way that has made us proud. So I look forward to working with all of you in this continuing struggle. I'm confident about our abilities if we work together. And I look forward to the day when we'll be talking about the inauguration of the next Democratic president in January of 2029. So let's do this and understand this. We can do this. We can do this. Optimism breeds involvement. Stay optimistic.
Thank you so much.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Attorney General Holder, for reminding us who we are, for the opportunity that we have in this moment, and what's at stake. We're so glad you were able to be here with us today. Also, a huge thanks to everybody who's in the audience for your participation, for your questions. I know many of you have been involved around the SAVE Act, and you've been contacting your representatives. You can find that on our website under DA Resists to stay involved. We are going to be sending around a recording when we have it ready, and we'll also send around the links that we shared in the chat box. So wishing everybody a happy May Day, and don't forget to request your ballot this year, regardless of whether at this moment you have an election scheduled, because there can always be those special elections. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye now.